Alright, in this video I'm just going to go over a few more applications and examples on how to solve any kind of quadratic equations or any equations that has quadratic variables in it. Okay, so these are some of the examples that my class actually have seen or have worked in their homework. So let's say this is one example of an application. Suppose you have two brothers. So we have two brothers and they leave the house at the same time. So they're both probably going to school, going to work, or wherever they're going. So let's say we're going to call the first person A. So we're going to call the person A, or maybe let's just call them, instead of A, X and Y. So person A, so that I don't call anybody's name out in public or on YouTube. So person A or person X is heading north. So in your head, you know, you're going to draw something that's going upwards. So heading, and the person is due north. And then the other person is, of course, we're going to say is going the other direction, and I'll tell you where. So heading due north, and the first person is actually biking, and is biking at 7 miles per hour slower than the second person. So we'll say second person is Y, who is going east. So to answer this question, of course, you need to know where is north, south, east, west. So north, south, you want to figure out where is west is on your left, east on your right. So this is the question. Then it says after how long? After 1 hour, the brothers, so both of them, so I would say both, are 17 miles apart. It's very similar to your linear equation, right? So they are away from each other 17 miles. So that is the distance if you measure using a straight line. So we are going to just assume everywhere they went is a straight direction. So if you measure them using a straight line between them, sometimes this is called as the crow flies, but you know, when the crow flies in the sky, you're just going to measure a straight line from where it started and where it landed. So the question here is, how fast are the brothers biking? So that means the speed, right? So they're both biking, one going this direction, one going that direction. So as I said, the first thing you want to draw your north and south. So one brother heading north. So they started at one location and one is heading north, and from the same direction one is heading east. So you figured out this is your north and this is your east. So one brother going this direction, one brother going this direction. They started the same direction. So when you work on north, east, south, west, you know it's a right triangle. So theorem Pythagoras should come to your mind. And then after a certain distance, brother X stops somewhere on top here. Brother Y stops somewhere on the east side. So the distance between both of them from the north to the east, that's why they say it's a straight line, is 17. So the question here would be, we need to find, we know this is Pythagorean, so if this is A, so I'm just going to write it like invisible but not invisible. This is B, this is C. So what it says is, if this brother, he says one brother who is heading north is 7 miles slower, which means if the speed of the brother who's running east is X, so in this case we're going to say the speed is going to be X for brother, let's say the brother who's going to east is Y. Should not have used XY, but it's okay. Okay, the second brother, which is brother number 2, and then the speed for brother number 1, he is 7 miles slower. X minus 7, that's going to be brother number 1. So which means brother number 1 is the one who's heading north, so he is running at 7 miles or biking 7 miles slower. And this is how you set up the right triangle. So if recall Pythagorean theorem, what does Pythagorean theorem says? Pythagorean theorem says that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So all you have to do is you already have all the variables that we need right here. Just put it into the Pythagorean, which is going to be, in this case will be, it doesn't matter if I write a squared plus b squared first. So we can just write it as x minus 7, that's what I labeled as my a squared, plus b is x, so x squared, c is 17, so 17 squared. So I'm going to write it down here so we can see it clearly right here. This is going to give me x squared minus, so I'm going to expand x minus 7, 14x plus 49. So that's for the first part. Second one is plus x squared equals 17 squared is 289. And so this is a quadratic equation, and you're trying to solve a quadratic equation, which means you want to make sure your right hand side is 0. To do that, we subtract 289 from both sides. So on the left hand side, find for all the like terms. I can see x squared plus x squared can be put together, and that will be 2x squared minus 14x has no like term, so that's just minus 14x. 49, we're going to subtract 289 from 49, and that's going to be minus 240. And again, look at the equation. If you notice, there is an even number on every term. So my suggestion would be to divide 2 on every term, and that's going to give us x squared. So we divided 2, and 14 divided by 2 is minus 7x, and 240 divided by 2 is 120 equals 0. And of course, now you need to be good in factoring this, and the way you want to factor is you're going to get x, and x you need minus 120, but in the middle you need negative 7. So that's going to be, I'll give you the solution, is 15 times 8, and I want 7 to be negative, which means it will be negative 15 plus 8 would give me negative 7. So in this case, x is going to be 15. The second choice, which is or x equals negative 7, will not be selected as your solution because that is a negative answer, right? So we don't want to have a negative distance or running negative direction. So x, what was x? X was brother number 2, right? He's the guy who's heading east. What was his speed? So he is biking at how many miles? 15 miles per hour. So what is brother number 1 biking at? He was x minus 7, who was going up. Brother to north. So he is biking 8 miles per hour because he's going the opposite direction. So this is how you solve simple application problems. Alright, so the next example, let's take a look at another example. Let's say we're not talking about anybody running anywhere, but this time we are going to work on things at number line. And let's say the question is, suppose you have 2 products, and you all know what is the meaning of 2 products at this time. This is algebra class. So product means you multiply 2 things together. So if I say 2, multiply 2 things. So let's say I'm telling you the product of 2 consecutive, so the numbers next to each other, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, these are consecutive numbers. So consecutive integers, which means no fractions, no decimal, is 41. So you have one number, comma, another number, so you need to assign. So 2 consecutive integers is 41, and we're talking about a product. We're not talking about a sum. So it's 41. I haven't finished it, right? 41 more than their sum. This is math. They're not going to give you something very easy. Than their sum. So the question is, what are the integers, right? So you need to figure out, okay, what is integer 1, what is integer 2. So if this is an exam, you're going to know how to set it up. What am I looking for? So you're looking for a number here, comma, a number here, which means you need to give a variable. So whenever I see the word integer, I'm just going to call it an x. Okay, so the product of two consecutive integers is 41 more than their sum. So if I write it out in English again, product of two consecutive numbers, right? So integers is equals, is equals, how would this set it up? 41 more than their sum, which means 41 plus the sum of the two numbers. So in this case, you don't know what's the difference or the addition of both of them. So I can call the first sum as A. And I can call the second sum as B. Okay, so how am I going to set this up? So you remember, whenever we are doing any consecutive integers, you can only have one variable. Because a lot of you will be tempted to say, I can say X and Y, I can say A and B. Alright, so is it okay for me to do A and B? Well, let's try it out. I want one variable. So product of two consecutive numbers, so I can do A times B equals 41 plus the sum of both of them, A plus B. The 41 more than the sum. But the thing is, I have two variables. Remember, when you're working in this particular chapter with quadratic equations, solving for a variable, I want only one. So how would I find out? The keyword is consecutive number. What is the meaning of consecutive number? If my first is X, my second will be the next number, right? It's a consecutive integer. It will be X plus 1. If the first one is B, second one will be B plus 1. So instead of writing A and B, two variables, I can set it up like this. So now let's replace everything back. Instead of A, it's going to be X times B, which is X plus 1. Now look, you only have one variable. Then right hand side is the same thing. 41 plus, you have A plus B, which is X plus 1. Isn't that pretty? So now what you have to do, you want to make sure that the right side, remember all the three steps, the right side has to be 0. Then you want to make sure everything is moved to the left, where you're going to make it look like A times B. The zero product rule equals 0. And then your third step, you're going to set A equals 0 or B equals 0, and you find the solution. So anytime you do quadratic equations, this is what you do. So let's distribute the first term here. This is going to be x squared plus x. What about here, 41 and all these numbers right here? 41 plus 1 is 41. X plus x plus x squared. Is that right? Think about it. I know this is a video. I can't see that you're thinking about it. No, it's not what it is. So if you're just following me blindly, you want to pause the video, think about it, look back what I did. It is 41 plus 2x. Now I want the right side to be 0, which means I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. And sorry, and then I'm going to subtract 41 on both sides. So my left hand side will be x squared. So if I take x, subtract with 2x, that's going to be negative x. Then 41, I'm going to subtract both sides by minus 41. That's going to be, what am I missing? I'm missing a plus 1 here. So plus 1, and you bring your 41 on this side, and that's going to give me minus 42. Is that right? Yep, that's going to be minus 42. That's going to be equals, what would happen here? Equals 0. Okay, let's take a look at this again. So on this side is actually, x plus x squared plus x. And if you're paying attention, you all should know there was a slight mistake that was made here. And we're going to continue with no mistakes. Okay, so the left hand side is x squared plus x equals the right hand side. You have 41 plus 1, which is 42. So that will be plus x is 2x. Now we're going to put all the terms together. First of all, you're going to subtract 2x on both sides, and then you're going to subtract 42 on both sides. So this will give me x squared. What is x minus 2x? Minus x minus 42. And right hand side is going to be 0. Okay, my step 1 is correct. Right one is 0. Then the next one is, can I factor this out to set it to 0? Yes, that's going to be x, and I want to be negative 42. And that's going to be minus 7 plus 6. So my solution here, x is going to be 7, or comma, right? X is going to be negative 6. So how do I know if the solution is correct? Remember the equation, initially it did say that the original equation that we had was, on the left, the product of two consecutive numbers, x times x plus 1. On the right was 41 plus x plus the sum of it, right? X plus 1. So what you want to do is, in order for you to check, you want to plug in each number one by one. So you want to plug each number one by one to test if the left hand side equals 0. So let's check when x equals 7. So this will be 7 times 7 plus 1 on the left. Right is 41 plus 7 plus 7 plus 1. Do you get left is 56 equals right 56? Yes. So do the same thing for x equals negative 6, and you will verify it's negative 6 times negative 6 plus 1. Is it equals to 41 plus negative 6 plus negative 6 plus 1? So you want to verify 0 equals 0. So if the question says you check, this is how you check it. So this is basically how you do simple applications in I would say using quadratic equations. And let's just do one more or two more, and we'll be done with this video, because I know that's going to help with a lot of students who are trying to take exam and want to get familiar with quadratic equation. So let's say this is another example. So e.g. is the example, and suppose you have this question. Sharon built a rectangular raised bed for vegetables. So we have this person, and she is building a rectangular. So she builds a rectangular. So that's math, which means you're going to draw it, right? So she's going to build a rectangular raised, that means she's raised up above the floor level, raised bed for vegetables. So she's trying to grow some veg. She created, so that's the story. Now she created a planting area. So in math, in area means you need to know what's the meaning of area, right? Planting area of, let's say in this case, is 24 square feet. So you should already be thinking, what does it mean to be 24 square feet? Now comes the interesting part. Suppose that the length of the bed is given, they're giving you something, is 2 feet longer than the width. So that's all the math that you have. Finally, the question is, find what's the length and the width. Remember, you need to have same variables. It's okay if you start off with 2 variables, but you want to be able to find the relationship. So here she is building a bed, so that is rectangle. So I'm going to have 4 sides, right? I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, see, something like this, even though it doesn't look straight, but we can figure it out. So something like this. So the area of a rectangle is length times the width. So suppose the longer side is length, I'm just going to write it very lightly, and the shorter is width. So let's read the story. She's creating a planting area of 24 square feet. So area is 24 square feet, right? Or square feet, this is how you write it. Then it says that the length of bed is 2 feet longer than the width. So I'm going to assign the width, because the one that says longer or shorter or more is the one that's going to be modified. So width is going to be my x. So my length is 2 feet longer. So it is 2 feet longer than width, which means it's x plus 2. So how would you set this up? You'll just use the formula, and the formula is this, and if you notice, this is an equation. So area is length times width, which is equals 24. So in this case, I'll say area equals length times the width, and area, which is 24, right? So it doesn't matter how I write it as long as you know what it means. So length times width here is x times x plus 2 equals, so this is the area, is given as 24. So remember, you have 3 steps. The first step, you always want to make sure the right hand side is set to 0. And then for the left hand side, you want to be able to simplify and factor. Make sure it's a plus times b, which is called the zero product rule. And finally, you want to solve for a equals 0, b equals 0. So in this case, to do this, you have to factor this out first, or distribute, because right side is not 0. If right side was 0, you would have just solved it immediately, but right is not 0, so it's going to be x squared plus 2x. And you can bring 24 to the left hand side by subtracting 24 on both sides. Now your right hand side is 0. So step 1 is done. With right side is 0, the next thing you want to do is factor this out. So when you factor this, this is going to be x and x. You want negative 24, so it's 6 times 4. You want positive 2, so 6 is positive, 4 is negative, equals 0. And now you can proceed with step 3. So if you don't remember what is step 1, 2, and 3, you have to watch my previous video on quadratics. I went over those things slowly. So this one will be x plus 6 equals 0, or x minus 4 equals 0. So x is going to be negative 6, or x is going to be 4. But of course, your logical choice is going to be 4, because you want the length to be positive, right? So now, if you're confident, you can say the length is 4. Otherwise, you can go ahead and check. So if the width is 4, so this is your width. The question says find the width. The length is x plus 2. So x plus 2 is 4 plus 2, which is 6. And your length is 6. So let's test the area. The area is width, which is 4, times your length, which is 6, equals 24. So here I didn't pick this because this is negative number. right? We don't want to have negative areas. So for application, it really matters if it's negative or positive. So the area is 24. Therefore, your answer, it says what are the length and the width. You will say my length and my width are these. So my length is 6 feet and so she is making quite a big bed, right, for her vegetables. She's going to have a lot of vegetables. One final question here is another one that also requires you to draw something that you already know. So not just area. So in this case, suppose you are given a triangle. So I'm going to draw a triangle here, and I'm going to put 3 sides, and then I'm going to put 90 degree, and I'm going to tell you this is x, and the height x minus 2 and x plus 2. And my question, I'm not saying any story, and I'm going to just say x, solve for x. So what's the first thing that should come to your mind? Pythagorean theorem, right? So what does Pythagorean theorem says? Pythagorean. So Pythagorean theorem says that if I have a right angle, if it's A, B, C, I can write the solution as a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is something you should already know, or if you don't remember, memorize it by now. Okay, so here my a is x squared because that's what my floor is, plus the height is b squared, in this case is x minus 2 squared equals x plus 2 squared. And you still have to do all the 3 steps. You want the right side to be 0, but there are so many factors and square involved, so you want to distribute everything, and this will become x squared plus x squared minus 2x plus 4. So this is how we expand this part, equals the right side is x squared plus 4x plus 4. So what you would do here, and of course you have to do all kinds of combining like terms. So we can combine x plus x, and there's an x here. But if you subtract this x from both sides, the x is gone. Then you have negative 2x and positive 4x. I can subtract both sides with 4x, and finally I have 4 and 4. I can subtract both sides by 4, and the whole reason I'm doing that because I want right side to be 0. I'm getting rid of everything from right. So what's left on the left is x squared. Negative 2x, negative 4 is going to be negative 6x. Then 4 minus 4 is gone. That equals 0. So now this is just 2 terms. This is easy. All I have to do is factor an x out. I'm left with x minus 6 equals 0. Does this look like a times b equals 0? Remember the 0 product rule? It does. That's your step 2, right? So now step 3, you can set a equals 0, b equals 0, which means it's x equals 0 or x minus 6 equals 0 and x equals 6, which is the logical solution that you're going to have. Of course not 0, because we're talking about a length of a triangle. In this case, if length is 0, which means there's no length at all, so it doesn't make sense. Okay, so your choice will be x minus 6. So if you were asked to draw the rectangle or the triangle, in this case, if your length is 6 and your height is going to be 4, and this is going to be 8. This says 4, 6, 8. Does it make sense? You'll have to figure it out by plugging in all the values. See, does this work? Okay, and I think that is all we have. And if you have more questions and if you want to see other examples, feel free to ask me and I'll be happy to add more examples. Thank you. So the only one note I want to give here is this was an example that was done in a class that I was teaching, right? So I think it's one of your homework or example. This is not correct. You have to go think about it, and this may be correct if it is not a right triangle, but the setup is correct. The way you solve it is what you got it, but your solution does not apply for that triangle. Okay, so this is wrong. So we went through a lot of trouble of doing all these things. How did I know, or how do we know this is wrong? You probably, if you were actually following the entire video, you probably know, yes, this is not right. How did I know it's wrong? Because this is a right triangle. I said, right, you have to remove the right triangle in order for you to make it correct. We started off by saying this is a right triangle, and we ended up getting 6 and 4 and 8. What does right triangle says? It says 4 squared plus 6 squared is equals 8 squared. Is this true? So 4 squared is 16 plus 6 squared is 36 equals 64. Is this correct? So 16 plus 36, what is 16 plus 36? You should be able to know how to do it, right? It's 52. Is 52 equals 64? No. So what is wrong with this work? Because just because we're doing math doesn't mean it has to be correct all the time. So what is wrong with this math? I went over this and I said everything is correct and everybody believed me, and probably that's what you should do. But in math, you want to be able to actually question if this is correct or wrong. So let me tell you, and you can fix it on your own. What happened here? When this was factored out, distributed, it should have been x squared plus x squared minus 4x plus 4. The right side, x squared plus 4x plus 4. This is the correct equation. This is wrong equation. So my whole idea of trying this work is to see what happens if you made a mistake, what happens if you don't check. And I came and I said, okay, this is correct, this is our solution, and we are done. If you have any questions, you ask me. And we're done. But what happened? I went ahead and checked. And that's why checking is very, very important, everybody. So make sure whenever you do anything, you solve something, you want to check, and then you redo the work, recheck the work. Okay? So you want to pay attention. This is wrong in the beginning, and everything that follows is wrong. And if this was an exam question, you would have definitely lost all the points after your first setup. Alright, I think that is all we have for today. Thank you, and I will add more videos on other topics.